Welcome, fellow internet traveler. This is Snoddie's Hobbies, and on today's video, I'm going to show you how I made this haunted forest terrain.
We're starting with the most innocent crafting material out there, pipe cleaners. Okay, let's grab a handful here. I'd say roughly, say about this much. And then, we're just gonna fold those in half. And then starting at the base of the tree, we're gonna start twisting these together to make our pipe cleaners into a sturdy trunk. And then as we move our way up the tree, we're gonna break the pipe cleaners off into smaller and smaller branches until we get to the very tiniest branches at the top of the tree. See, with these trees, I'm trying to capture this gnarled and ancient, kind of mysterious look to them. Think forest, where paths wind and twist, and one wrong misstep means you could be gone forever. Okay, so at this point, our trees definitely look like they're more of a home for the Lorax. It's about time to say goodbye to the fuzziness of these pipe cleaners and just lock everything together once we have a shape that we really like. Just a quick blast of the heat gun just melts everything together and just seals these trees up really neatly. Okay, so for safety's sake, I'm working in a well-ventilated area. I mean, we are most likely melting plastic here, or at the very least something synthetic. If you're like me, and you cohabitate with these mischief makers we call cats, I definitely recommend putting these trees in some sort of box with a lid. Because we're only halfway done with this hobby project right now, but we have 100% made something that my little fuzzballs just absolutely pine over. Okay, so now we gotta make something for these trees to stand on. For a base, I use these Litco wooden bases. They're about 80 millimeters and absolutely perfect for this kind of project. So these bases, they're looking a little tad bare, so we need to spruce them up a bit. I am gonna be using these cedar chips I got from my local home and garden store to simulate rock texture. Now, I know a massive tree that is just shooting out of a top of a big old boulder doesn't pass the scientific with a capital S test, but this is fantasy and we are firmly rooted in the rule of cool. So these cedar chips are super friendly on the wallet. So go crazy with them. Make some really cool rock textures and really big boulders. And if you're doing this and you don't think it exactly looks right, then stick around, because later in the video, I'm gonna show you a very easy way to blend this all together. The next thing we're gonna be doing is drilling a small hole on top of these cedar chips. This will give us something to mount our trees to. Then we're gonna cut a small wire and stick it into the base of our pipe cleaner tree. Mount that onto the base, and just repeat until you have a forest of psychedelic trees. All right, so let's start transitioning these trees from their carnival funhouse vibe into something that's a little bit more wonderfully wilderness. To introduce a bark-like texture, we're going to crumple some aluminum foil around the base of that pipe cleaner. So this method is a real breeze, and an absolute shortcut when it comes to sculpting bark texture. Plus, it's pretty affordable. And as the old saying goes, if you are what you eat, well then I guess I'm just fast, cheap, and easy. All right, let's add an extra touch of realism to our trees. And that's gonna be by adding some roots. I think this is one of the most transformative steps in the entire process. It takes our trees from looking like sticks we found in the yard and to a tree that is as old as time. So for the next phase, I sort of just splattered these things all over with spray adhesive. And if I was gonna be completely honest with you, spray adhesive is kind of hot garbage and I really don't like working with it. If I was gonna tackle these trees again in the future, I'd probably just stick to something like Mod Podge or tacky glue. But anyhow, once these things were all gross and sticky, I just buried them in tile grout. And if sun gets on the base, don't lose sleep over it. Frankly, the tile grout looks great there too. I mean, who knew? Tile grout makes great dirt. So my reasoning for using brown tile grout here is that I'm hoping that if I ever miss any part of these trees when I'm painting them, that it'll still blend in okay with the final project and look okay from a distance. Or at least that's the dream. We'll see if that works out. So once everything was buried in tile grout, I just took a little bit of water and misted all the trees. This made the tile grout kind of blend together and really start to solidify. I think this will help it adhere to the model in the long term. Okay, so this is how the forest is looking so far. I think we're off to a great start, but we can still see a few spots where the aluminum foil and pipe cleaners are kind of peeking through our tile grout. So I'm just gonna repeat the previous step with the spray adhesive, burying it in the tile grout, and then misting it down with water. But I'm gonna go ahead and do this off camera, that way I can ensure complete coverage. After laying down the tile grout, I decided to introduce some color to these trees. I started with a dark brown to kind of fill in my shadows. I kind of thought the spray paint was gonna be enough to fortify these trees and hold everything together. But after some real world testing and a few games, they're a little on the fragile side. So I would probably recommend putting down a layer of like watered down Mod Podge or some watered down PVA at this step. Especially for those of you that are playing at a club or communal gaming spaces. Once the dark brown was down, I then hit the trees with this rattle can of London Grey from Rust-Oleum, and hats off to them because this is like the perfect tree bark color. I'm not sure if that was their intention, but if you ever had to paint a lot of trees in a hurry, this is worth every penny. Okay, so here's the current state of our trees after paint. And honestly, if you're going for like a winter or like graveyard or dead trees or maybe a blighted forest, I think this look is absolutely perfect. But it's not the look I want to go for. I want to add some canopy to these, and I'm gonna bulk it out with some polyfill. But in its current form, it's not exactly the verdant green color I was hoping for, so let's see if we can fix that. And then I'm gonna squirt some brown paint into the bottom of this cup, because it turns out our trees are, well, mostly brown. And then I'm gonna take that polyfill and just kind of stick it in there and see if I can mix this all up. Okay, so then once I put the polyfill in the cup and start mixing around, I decided to just ditch the cup. It's wasting of time. Just squirt the paint right into the polyfill, get your hands dirty, and let's get this mixed up. So now that we have our polyfill, this like nice deep shade of brown, let's breathe a little life into it and add a touch of vibrancy. I'm just gonna grab some green paint and kind of swirl that around the top to give it kind of a forgotten forest vibrancy. Okay, now that we have that green into the polyfill canopy, it's time to attach it to the trees. For that, I'm just gonna go quick and easy here and reach for my trusty hot glue gun. But if you were in less of a rush, I absolutely think you could just use some PVA or white glue, but I'm trying to get these trees ready for game night, so I'm gonna roll with the hot glue. It's time to clean up those hot glue wisp and kind of contract that polyfill, make it not so wispy and smoky looking. To do this, I'm just gonna blast it with the heat gun again, and that's gonna shrink everything up. If you do decide to follow along or do this project yourself, again, just make sure you're in a well-ventilated area or you're wearing a respirator, because again, we're melting plastic. So I am super happy with how these trees are looking. Personally, I'm getting some real like Warcraft 3 vibes from them.
Okay.
And that is just a happy trip down memory lane for me. So I would not hesitate at all to throw these on the table as is. But I think we could take these to the next level pretty easily. So don't leave just yet. And let me show you how we're gonna make these trees look a little bit more, in my opinion, realistic. So let's whip up some DIY flocking for our trees. I'm gonna start with some dried basil. Okay, so quick side note, because I get this question all the time, that several people have concerns about using organic material in their terrain builds. They're worried that it's gonna mold or rot over time. Now, personally, and I will admit this is a sample size of 1, with all the sealing and glue that you put on top of this stuff, I just haven't seen it happen. The worst I've personally experienced is a little bit of browning over time, but that's a pretty easy fix with just a simple dry brush or your airbrush. So now we want to bulk this flocking up with some sawdust. As an added bonus, this terrain is going to smell amazing for a couple weeks. So game night, just kind of a little bit more aromatic. And then finally, throw in some paint. Mix it all up. And personally, I think this is a great flocking material for our trees. And it cost us pennies. So for this next step, we're gonna channel our inner Bob Ross here, right? We're gonna dab on some Mod Podge all over the polyfill canopies. And then once we got that adhesive down, just dip the entire tree into our DIY flocking. That adhesive is going to give our trees a full leafy look. I mean, look at these happy little trees. So right now, our trees are almost ready for game night. There's just one more thing I want to do with this project, and that's to give them a bit of an area terrain and also line of sight blockers. So we're going to add a larger base. So I'm going to begin by putting these trees on a piece of foam core and sketching everything out. I want to mark where the holes need to be with like some circles, and also just get a general layout of what the base and the table is going to look like. And honestly, me and straight lines are not friends. So we're just going to go for a wavy organic cut on this thing, because we're going for like a winding forest path. So from the beginning, I knew one of the things I wanted for this project was those trees to be removable from the base. That way, if one of my players decides to move a model into the forest, I can move the trees to make some room for my not so dainty fingers. So I want to magnetize the trees so they're easily removable. And to do this, I laid down some old sheet metal. You might be tempted to use some sort of a fancy adhesive to get this attached, but frankly, I find that duct tape does the trick. I mean, it's in the name, right? And then I'm gonna hit that exposed sheet metal with some of that brown spray paint from before. That way, hopefully it's not glaringly obvious that it's there when one of these trees gets plucked out during gameplay. So the foam core is absolutely the perfect height for our bases. But let's be honest, foam core is not the most structurally sound material. And if we use any sort of water-based PVA or adhesives on this project, we just bought ourselves a one-way ticket to Warp City. Okay, so to secure that foam core, we're gonna use a secret weapon, these self-adhesive floor tiles. For starters, they are super flat. Second off, they're very affordable, especially if we go with a cheaper or uglier pattern. And lastly, you don't have to worry about warping at all on these things. It's time to make this base a little bit less like foam core-ish and a little bit more dirt-ish. And we're gonna do that by mixing up some basing paste. We're gonna start off with some sand. Using plaster, Mod Podge, some water, and a little bit of brown paint. I don't really have a recipe here that I follow. I kind of just do it by feel or by eye. If I want it to be a little bit more firmer, I'll add some more plaster. If I want the terrain paste to be a little bit more fluid, you just add some more water. This is actually a very cost-effective way to do basing and also very forgiving. Okay, so once you got that paste looking just the way you want it, it's time to go to town and spread that goop all around. We're doing two things here. First, we're adding texture to the base. Second off, we're also blending the foam core and that floor tile together. All right, so let's break this base up a little bit. Ideally, we still want this base to be playable and we want our models to easily fit in and around the forest. But I do think adding a few cedar chip barks will kind of break things up just a little bit. And if we do similar, boulder formations on the base as we mounted our trees to, I think that'll look really nice. Now that we got the base all textured up, it's time to seal everything and lock everything down. For that, I'm just gonna use a tried and true method of black craft paint and some Mod Podge. Okay, so I'm just gonna be doing some dry brushing here. You can probably catch on to what I'm doing simply by watching. So let me take this time to talk about these trees and what I plan on doing with them. Fellow adventurers, honestly, trees are probably the most versatile terrain piece you can add to your collection. You'll find them in high fantasy settings like Sword Coast, or even grim dark fantasy settings like the Old World, or even in a galaxy far, far away. I mean, trees have pretty much found themselves everywhere. However, these trees are headed to the battlefields of the Napoleonic era, but with a slight twist. See, while most fantasy settings I think kind of default to like a medieval time period, I'm gonna mix things up and set my fantasy game in the Regency era. The game world I'm thinking about is kind of like Bridgerton, but with a pinch of Evil Dead, or maybe just Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies.
Hail to the king, baby.
Well, that's the vibe I'm going for. I've actually been toying with doing a battle report on this channel. I've been watching a lot of dice chatter, and frankly, they just look like a lot of fun to make. So I thought this new campaign might be a cool way to showcase, my setting and some rules for Silver Bayonet. Hit me up in the comments if you think that's something you might want to watch. All right, enough chit chat. Let's get into the next step and blanket that paint job with some lush forest ground cover. I'm gonna show off my secret ingredient for this forest floor cover, and that's tea. I'm then gonna mix that tea up with some coconut fiber and also throw in a little bit of that dried basil. I think this combination gives us a great forest floor cover. Then we'll just be smothering our bases in that coconut fiber mixture, and trust me, I think this makes the world of difference. I also just didn't stop with these tree bases. I also made this forest scatter terrain using the same basing techniques I've been showing you. And check out these bushes I made. They're just reindeer moss covered in Mod Podge and then dunked in that tree flocking we made earlier. These are super durable, and personally, I think they look awesome. Okay, so I'm gonna be quiet for now, and I'll let the terrain do the talking. Here's some glamour shots. I hope you have a fantastic day. I recommend you watch this video here. It's a simple one about making hills. And personally, I think adding elevation to your tabletop is like the #1 thing you can do to make your games more fun.